So next we have a couple of very interesting friends of ours that we love very much. They're really, becoming family to us.
So we had a couple coming up here who embodies the unique face of love in their special brand, and it's such an extraordinary love to be surrounded by and be in sacred friendship with. And they're my teachers. They're an inspiration to parts of me that I didn't know could come alive. And gosh, I just love them. I love them so much. And I think after you hear them speak, you'll know why. These are two of the most brilliant human beings I've ever known, individually and in relationship. And so if you listen to them with a receptivity that something that you couldn't have learned otherwise is available in their speaking, I think it'll be really useful.
Yeah, also, these folks, like the others that you'll see speak here, and like Amber and Nathan, we've spent multi-hour sessions with them, kind of mentoring us and working with us on our relationship, us working with them on their relationship. And with them in particular, we have this dynamic where one of us will have kind of like a challenge that will come up, and we'll get upset or get triggered, and we'll say something, and then kind of someone in the other couple who you're about to meet, two of us will make eye contact. Like, that happens with you guys too? And what's very interesting is it's kind of opposite. So the couple we're going to introduce you to, Bryan Franklin and Jennifer Russell, Jennifer and I have this kind of bond in a certain way, this similarity in how we think and what we say and what we do. And Bryan and Annie have this similarity. And so we have this great kind of cross-gender translating into other languages effect that is, it's really spectacular. It's really unifying and beautiful in a way. It allows us to see each other's perspectives. So hopefully you'll get to see another way of doing love here that can communicate to you a whole new set of distinctions. You'll get new ideas, another way of seeing things, and we're trying to bring you as many perspectives as possible because all perspectives are partial, and as much as we try to bring you the best stuff we have, there are just things that we can't see. We don't do it the same way, and these are a couple of the best in the world ever.
Yeah, they inspire us to love better regularly.
So give a warm welcome to Bryan Franklin and Jennifer Russell.
I'm a completely different man standing here now than I was when I met Jennifer about 4 years ago. Completely different. And one of the ways that I want to kind of give you a sense of that difference is that all of the major concepts, all of the major ideas that are important to me now, that actually give meaning to my life, have been redefined in my exploration with Jennifer. And one of the results is there's now a whole series, maybe hundreds of statements that I can make to you now, which are just the truth. They're just as it is now, which I would never have been able to say 4 years ago with a straight face. Statements which would have been, I would have giggled or laughed, or it would have been outright lying. So for some of you who know me pretty well, this, particularly if you met me in the last couple of years, these aren't going to make sense to you because they're going to feel like, yeah. So the first is that I'm an artist. I'm a musician, and I'm an artist in the way that I love, and I'm an artist in our work. I'm an artist in the way that I work with entrepreneurs, with Jennifer, and I'm an artist with my interactions with people. And that idea of being an artist was something I previously had the perspective of aspiring to. Like, that's other people are artists. But now I'm an artist. I'm also a spiritual man. And I remember having a conversation with Jennifer where I sat her down, and I'm like, okay, can we just get something straight? What the fuck does spiritual mean? Because I just don't, that word keeps coming up, and people are saying it like it means something, and what does that mean? And I now have a direct knowing of what that means. I'm a spiritual man. I'm an honest man. And I actually would have been able to say that before, but it would have been a lie. Fundamentally, I'm an honest man. I bring my honesty to every moment, to you, to this right now, to Jennifer, and all of our interactions. Because I know that who I am really, the real story about me, is enough. It's enough for any situation or person that I might be with. And the last one, and to me this was the biggest, I love myself. I love myself, the identity, the ego, and I love myself, the truth self. And I can feel and experience that love day to day walking through life. So those statements, those collections of statements, were literally made possible by my relationship with Jennifer. And they were wholly absent from my life for the 35 or whatever years it was before meeting her. So I just want to start with the gratitude and to kind of let you in on, when I talk about Jennifer or our relationship, what that really means to me, so that you have an anchor for what I mean when I say my relationship with Jennifer.
Yeah. For me, I'm also a completely different woman after being loved so fiercely by this man. I was on a completely different path in life upon meeting him, and a path where I was struggling and loving my struggle and playing the kind of general games of how to make money and how to get ahead, how to impress my father, how to win my mother's love. And upon meeting Bryan, he saw in me a future version of myself that was a childhood dream I'd had that I had let go of a long time ago. And he believed and had such faith in me of becoming that version that I stand here today having become a teacher, a change agent, someone who not only seeks wisdom, but also has the incredible opportunity to share it in front of all of you. When I was young, I had this kind of dream of always wanting to do that, but thinking that that wasn't possible for me. And our love catalyzed that vision into coming into being such that I stand here today. So there's a woman here that didn't exist before meeting Bryan. And I've never been loved the way this man loves. He's helped me to completely redefine words like the word love, like the word partnership, like the word spirituality, like the word intimacy, like the word sex, like the word freedom and devotion. So these words have been completely redefined and given life and meaning in my life in a way that didn't exist before. So I literally owe my life to this man because I've died into becoming the woman I always dreamed of. And so why do we share all that with you? One of the reasons is there's been a lot of talk about relationship being kind of the key to growing into those future versions of ourselves, the best versions we have, both in our minds or in our partner's minds. And we want to talk to you today about two of the key things that we think need to be in place. Because we've all been in relationships, Bryan and I have been in relationships before that didn't feel like this, that didn't work like this. And one of the first things that we want to work with you today is about exposing the stories or narratives in your current relationships with your partners and with everyone that you interact with, but specifically your partners. We want to expose those narratives that are now running your relationship as one path to having your relationship be a key to your transformation.
Sound good? You want to do that?
Are we up for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Well, before we dive into that first piece, I want to share a couple of things that I've noticed just in the last couple of days. Well, one of them is that there's been some extraordinary couples up here already, haven't there not? Yeah? I mean, amazing. Annie and Eben, Nathan and Amber, just amazing couples. And they have the same experience we do, which is the things that I'm most grateful to Jennifer for, her attributes which I most resound with, that I most resonate with, are things that maybe weren't even there before we met. The things that she loves most about me are things about me that weren't really present necessarily before we met. So who we are together because of the relationship, it feels to me like she gave me that stuff. And it feels to her like I gave her that stuff. You can hear it in our language. But actually, it didn't exist for either of us until we met. It was the relationship itself which made it possible. And I know that to be true both for Annie and Eben, Nathan and Amber, because we're close friends with those guys. Who they've been for each other, they weren't able to be without each other. So that's a pretty interesting frame. Instead of like looking for the person who's going to give me the stuff that I need for my transformation. All right. Jennifer mentioned exposing the stories, the narratives. So it turns out narrative, or the story, is what gives meaning to the events of your life. And meaning can roughly be translated to your physical emotional response, your emotional body response. So if something happens, you have a huge emotional body response, it's a very significant event for you. But the significance of that event doesn't belong to the event itself. It belongs to the story that contains the event. Does it make sense? You guys all with me so far? And so all of the significance is given by story, and most of the stories, for some of you, all of the stories that are giving your relationships or your relationship to relationships significance, all of those stories are automatic, not chosen by you, not deliberate. They're just sort of, you pick them up somewhere, and they occur to you as true, and then as an event props up, you fit it into the story, it gives significance, which further proves the story. So in order to start to build a relationship, either the one you have now or the one that you might have, in order to start to build a relationship that's going to allow for the kind of transformation we've experienced, Annie and Eben have experienced, we got to expose those automatic narratives, right? That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, so let me give you a couple examples that give you a better sense of what we mean by automatic narratives. And I thought I'd reveal a few that were running my relationships before I met Bryan. One of the first ones I have affectionately named the lover-beloved narrative. And I give it a beautiful name because on one level, this is the game that we've been talking about all day of the dominance and submission and the power struggles that go on with the triune brain and the lizard and the mammal and the conceptual brain with the human. This story of the lover-beloved is that there's always someone who is beloved and up on the pedestal and is receiving the love from the lover. And it's like a game for me of like who's on top, who's got power. The game is like who loves who more, right? Is anyone familiar with this, like playing this who loves who more, lover, beloved, with their relationships? Let me see a show of hands of any of you. Yeah. So, I've been on both sides of this story. I mention it because it was running me rather than being a dynamic that I noticed myself going in and out of. When I'm the lover, I'm kind of the victim. I'm the sweet one. I'm the one that's perfect. And he's the one that's, treating me terribly, and I'm upset about it. And, he's mean and he's selfish, and I have all sorts of judgments with this lover and beloved dynamic, which can spiral you out of control.
Let me get this straight.
Yeah.
The beloved on the pedestal
Yes.
is also the predator, the predator, the perpetrator.
Perpetrator, yes.
And the lover.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's a new one for me. Sorry, I'm just grokking that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some synergy with those concepts, right? So the lover beloved is a common one that I ran, and it ran my relationships for years and years, and I was kind of aching for, God, I just want a partner. I don't want to play this who's on top game anymore. Another real common narrative that I want to expose to you guys is the teacher-student, right? Sometimes I call these affectionately the project relationships, right? Have any of you ever taken on a project relationship? Yeah.
Anyone been the project?
Have you been the project? Yeah. Will you raise your hand if you were? Right. And I got into several of these for a while. Was having fun with the teacher-student, and would find the kind of the wounded, troubled partner who I knew I could fix. Right? I was going to fix everything about him. I was going to make him better. And it came from a beautiful place in me, by the way. These narratives aren't all negative. But fundamentally, in order for us to continue to relate, he'd have to continue to be troubled, and I'd have to continue to feel superior. Right? And so the moment that game runs out and the jig is up, that isn't actually true, there's no context for relating anymore. And so these narratives perpetuate themselves in your relationships. And what we want to do is expose some of these so that you can see for yourself which ones are running automatically that you might not want to be running. I was fundamentally unhappy about these narratives running my life right when I met Bryan. And him and I are deep, deep students of the human psyche, how humans work, what creates change. And so I was in a deep question for myself about how to get out of this, because I knew that on one level I loved being the one on top. It feels really good to be beloved.
Especially at the beginning.
Especially at the beginning, but I was left also fundamentally unsatisfied. Right? There's no way to win there. These narratives often, although positive, breed resentment, right? What is the Dalai Lama quote about war? As long as there's war...
It's Gandhi.
It's Gandhi, yes.
As long as there's a loser...
There's a loser, yeah.
The war is not over.
The war is not over.
As long as there's a loser, the war is not over. And if you're the beloved and you've got a lover, after the initial sort of ego jerk-off of that wears off, what you don't have is a partner. Someone to rely on, someone to expand you. Mm-hmm. So you will stagnate, and the relationship will only grow to where you started.
And I want to make one more distinction here, which is what we're not talking about is that there isn't this lizard and mammal and human battling it out, and that these dynamics, you're going to transcend this narrative and then never have those dynamics occur. They occur all the time. They occur with Bryan and I, 1,000 times a second. I mean, we can't even keep up. But the difference that we're talking about here is realizing that that's running you and doing something else. Noticing it, but not letting it tell you how to behave in a relationship.
Who's in a relationship now, or your last significant one, was one of the conflicts was who loves who more? I'm worried that I love more. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm going to speak to you guys specifically just for a second, and for the rest of you, you might find yourself in this situation in the future. If you're ever in a situation where the conversation is about who loves who more, there's a crease in that narrative that you can use to escape it, which I just want to give you that one. Which is that in any moment, love is either present or not present by your sensory account of the moment. Right? You either feel love is present or you feel love is not. And so in any moment, you have a choice of loving and being open to love or not. That's it. You cannot quantify love any other way. There is no more than. There is no less than. So it was in my courting of Jennifer, we slipped into the lover-beloved routine with Jennifer on the pedestal, which for obvious reasons, why she'd be on a pedestal. And, you know...
Wait. Do you know what's amazing about us that I just want to share, because I want you to have this with your partners, which is that secretly we each think we got the better end of the deal.
Totally.
I think I got the better end of the deal. He swears he does, and he's wrong.
The only difference is she doesn't know what she's talking about. But so we slipped in this lover-beloved, and I was kind of chasing her, and she was like, I'm not sure. And I'm like, yeah, I'm down on one knee and the whole bit, right? And we're doing that. And she brought up, I'm concerned about this lover-beloved dynamic because I know how that ends, and I don't want to enter it. And so we talked about, well, in any moment, there's either love or isn't. So is there love right now? Yes. Okay, we're good. Let's just focus on that. And if there isn't, then we'll deal with that when that happens. But right now, is there love? Yes, good. Is there love now? Yes, good. And within a month or two, that story just couldn't, it had no handholds.
Yeah, it's like I'll sometimes say there was no oxygen for that story to really take hold and survive as a true thing for us.
And just to give some more color to how that gives meaning to everything else. Let's say that you're living into the belief that they love me more than I love them, and then you get a text and you don't feel like returning it right now. What's that mean? You know, that you don't love them as much, that, you know, there's all this energy into how long it takes you to return the text, which could be because your phone died or you were in the bathroom or you just didn't feel like it. But instead of, I was in the bathroom and that meant that I had a biology situation, it's, I was in the bathroom and that means that I'm better than you, you're never going to get the love you want, our relationship is chronically flawed, and this text message suddenly now can cut you right into your heart and has you down on your knees. So all that meaning came from the narrative, not from your choice about when to return the text. Right? If the narrative's the other way, the lover doesn't return the beloved's text, then the meaning's totally different. They don't care, it's not a big deal, take your time. I'm on my pedestal, I'm cool anyway. I've got lots of texts from lots of lovers, whatever it is. You know, I'll read yours when I get to it.
So it's like the lens that you interpret everything. This is why it's so important to expose what that is and to bring awareness and attention to what that is.
Right.
You know, if there's something that we want to leave you with, and I think everyone's been talking about it, is how to have a conscious relationship. Because the more consciousness that you can bring to your relationship, the more you're able to have the relationship that you really want in your life, which is one where you're becoming the best version of you, not the worst.
So we have some handouts.
Let's while we're explaining this, let's go ahead and start handing these out.
You're going to get 3 pages. One of the handouts is 2 pages, and it says Exposing Your Automatic Narratives. That's the one we're going to be working with right now. And the other one says Context for Relating. We're going to work with that later. So you want to kind of put them in this order. We're Exposing Your Automatic Narrative. Page 1 and 2 is on top. We're going to work with that right now.
Yeah, let's explain while they're getting it.
So what you'll do is you're going to sit and have some writing time. And what we want you to do is answer some questions either about your current relationship or about your previous relationship, your most recent serious relationship, that will help you expose some of the automatic narratives, because it's pretty likely that you don't see them as narratives. You know, it's pretty likely that you, as the fish, cannot see the water. And this document is going to help you do that when you answer these questions. The narrative you're living into is a collection of stories you tell yourself that give each of life's events meaning. And most of us are living automatic ones. To create your relationship deliberately, your automatic narratives must be named, diligently exposed in day-to-day. Oh, this is that thing we're doing. Oh, yep, this is the story. Yep, this is the story. Hey, you know how I felt about that text? That was the story. Yep, that's the story. And then replaced with a more empowering context, which we'll talk about later. So everyone have the handouts?
I think they're coming. They're coming.
Okay. So go ahead and take about 4 minutes now to write the answers to these questions on these 2 pages. Okay, and what we'd like you to do now is find a new romantic relationship starting now. No. Find, because once you're in the pattern, you're totally screwed. Find a partner to do this exercise with that is not your romantic partner. And just share what you think the narrative is. Share the kind of story, the overarching story that's described by your answers here. And maybe you can use each other to help narrow that down. We'll give you each 2-3 minutes to share, and we'll tell you when to switch. So find a partner now and begin.
Yeah, the juicy bit is like to tell the story that you enlist all your friends in to make them wrong. Like, what do you tell your friends to make them wrong?
Make the partner wrong.
Yeah, to make your partner
Not the
wrong.
friends.
And what do you tell your friends when you're wanting them to think that your partner is great? These are the stories. These are your narratives. So do that in partnership.
We want to hear from 2 people, 1 at each mic, really fast, if you're crystal clear about your narrative. If you're clear about your narrative.
Yeah, we got 1.
We got 1.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Narrative, and this is last night. Last night I was downstairs. I was waiting for Mario a couple of minutes, and I'm standing there at the front, and I'm looking at the beautiful species. You know how we changed a lot from these short, hairy legs into these long, bare-legged. You know what I mean? So we changed a lot, and I'm standing there, and I'm saying to myself, whoa, I'm much more intellectual than that. You know, I'm at intimacy intensive. I don't need that anymore. And then I say, oh, my neo, you know, my neocortex. I'm not sure, Eben, if this is why they call him neo, you know, this neo part of the neocortex. And I'm saying, wow, he's so powerful. And then it comes to this whole story about, Lou, are you lying here? And why am I lying? What am I hiding? Is because you don't have the guts to approach? Is because you're here with your wife and there's no, really, you don't have an opportunity? So this whole narrative, and so what happened was my wife came, and what's happening at this transformational event here is that a whole new understanding of emotional intelligence, a whole new understanding of opening the heart,
Yes.
and I'm having conversations with my wife that I never had before, dissecting the cocktail of emotions and seeing. So we're discussing these emotions. So when you feel this, when I am on edgy, what are you really feeling? You know. So what came up with the typical, but all of a sudden we have the words and the names for it, which is. Okay, so I don't love you, and you're gonna have to move back to your mother, you know, with 5 kids, and it's like a whole different thing. So I want to again thank you. What I want to add to this is also everybody's busy with finding the soulmate, and what I'm hearing from you, from Eben, from Nathan, Amber, I'm hearing that you keep growing. So you were, like you mentioned, you're not the same woman as you were before, right?
Yeah.
So and I want to see if we can change in the world. So it's not about finding the soulmate. It's finding a potential and crafting it into the soulmate.
Crafting a soulmate, yeah.
So that's
It's often even more about crafting yourself
Oh, yeah.
into that soulmate rather than finding the partner and trying to craft them into it.
yeah,
Right.
not that finding yourself.
Yeah,
So
and
you
crafting
both-
yourself into a soulmate.
in a game. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
becoming the better person.
Yeah.
Now, we had called you up here to talk about a narrative in your relationship.
Yeah.
And although I don't think you intended to, you exposed one,
Which one?
which I'd like to offer for you.
Yes, thank you.
Which is that you have a narrative that your wife prevents you from expressing yourself. And this is how you express that. You said, here, then you're making the joke about the hairy legs and then the clean legs and all the intellect, and then, but I'm here with my wife, and this is when you age regressed the most, and when you're mostly an older person, and you got to be about 5 years old, my made-up number, not accurate, and you said, but I'm here with my wife, and so I didn't have an opportunity.
Notice the physiology of.
Right.
Yeah, I know that.
So this is the story that you don't have an opportunity for blank, and in this case it was a sexual opportunity, but I would assert that it bleeds from sex into many, many areas of expression. I don't have an opportunity, and then you're assigning authorship to that block of opportunity to her. And that narrative gives meaning to your interactions. For example, you're there, you're with a wife, the woman looks at you, you don't look back, and it's because you're with her and you have all the feelings about that.
So where does those go? So they come up. They
I'm
come
just-
up later. They come up 60 minutes later.
You have an opportunity to have a different story, a different relationship to what's happening and what you're feeling and what occurs. Because I would assert that her preventing you from having opportunities is probably not the most empowering way you could look at monogamy or whatever the structure of your relationship is.
I have a saying: monogamy, man, M-A-N, stands for monogamy against nature. Well, who knows?
I don't know the agreements of your relationship.
No, well,
And regardless of them, there's a more empowering story
true.
that you probably together could start to investigate in the rest
Definitely.
of our time.
And
So I want to
I
just
appreciate-
expose that.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I know.
Do you see how narratives come out, though? You know, it's not the what I'd like to cause to happen and what makes sense to me in a logical sense. It's what gives meaning to those little interactions, what gives them charge that occur just as how it is. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Aaron, and someone actually gave me the title of my story here at this conference today. And the title is that I won't call you on your shit if you don't call me on my shit. And this has been something that's played out in my life because the majority of the relationships that I've gotten into have been with other individuals that are just like me, that we love being in love, and we're addicted to the thoughts of what love is. So we'll try to keep what we think as a sacred relationship by going through these rituals that we both love, like Sunday morning, okay? And if the towel's on the floor, we ignore it because we're so in love. We go and we see each other, and even though we get these irritating feelings about each other, we ignore it. We just get away from it and try to go, oh, well, this is bad here, so we'll go off and not talk about the problem, just go to breakfast. And look into each other's eyes and just be with each other and not really be with each other. And I will also notice that when we're disgusted with each other, that starts the death of the relationship. Because we go so deep into being attached to this image of what perfect love is that we never get into the process of just being in love. We're trying to create and construct and just build this idol which is our relationship. And what always happens is that first crack comes in, that first look of disgust where we can't hide it, and that resentment just builds and builds and builds until we're shouting at each other. We can't hide it from our friends. We can't hide it that we have this hatred towards each other. It's not the pure type of love. It's the love-hate relationship, and that we're trying to protect that.
So much good stuff there. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing.
Yeah.
some of the narratives that I heard that I wanted to highlight, in addition to the one that you sort of broadcasted, which is, I won't call you on your shit, you won't call me on mine. You also said, we're addicted to being in love. Right? So that's a narrative. And then that way, when you step over the towel, it has both for you the meaning that you're doing that for some good reason because you love, and the secret knowledge that that's not true. Where it could mean that you were stepping over the towel. Right? So I would look at that addicted to narrative and see about stepping out of it. Are you in a current relationship, or?
Actually, these are past relationships that I've been into.
Right.
And I think you're spot on, because the work I have done is really kind of coming to a point of sobriety.
Yeah.
What I mean by sobriety is not really being attached to the pleasure from a certain thing. And because there's process addictions, there's substance addictions, and all these different things. And so the work that I've done since that past time is to really just focus on being present and having gratitude for what is, rather than what I think should be.
And then I wanted to offer you one thing about the love-hate. You said it wasn't real pure love or true love, real love. It was love-hate, right? So I submit that the pure love that you're talking about doesn't exist. That is a myth. And that love-hate isn't love-hate. It's love with the presence of mind to accept, and love when you are unwilling or unable to or choosing not to accept yourself, her, the situation. So it's not really hate her. It's being presented with a version of yourself that you don't want to admit exists. So I would take love-hate with an intention to accept in every moment of hate. Oh, there's my lesson, accept. I would take that over what you described as the more pure love 10 times out of 10. If you iterate on that process, that love-hate with an intention to accept over 2 years, 5 years, a decade, you will be a transformed man. You will be standing here saying, I was nothing like I was 10 years ago when I went to Eben's seminar. So I just wanted to offer you that.
Thank you for your gifts.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So every narrative, even the most beautiful, eventually runs out of usefulness. Every one of them. I had a narrative running about being an independent woman. And I had erected my metaphorical temple around that being the best way to be in the world. My whole family system rewarded me for that independence. I got my love for being that way. But eventually that narrative butted up against the idea that I actually depend on this man for the relationship that we have. I depend on this man for the love and sex and fuck that I want. Right? I depend on this man for the nature of our relationship and our living situation. And so you often go from a narrative that feels like it's self-defining. And it's terrifying to let go of some of these. So I just want to warn you, as you're starting to identify these narratives, that they're going to feel like so part of you that it's like the caterpillar cocooning itself, facing his own liquefaction. Because you have to die into something else. And if you're going to let go of a narrative that you've built a temple around, you have to have something else as your guide wire that's more important, or it won't stick, or that metaphor will, or that narrative will seduce you back in. I went around and around on several over and over. I mean, these are the patterns that we all talk about and pull our hair out about. It's like, oh, I did it again. So we want to talk to you. So we're not going to leave you here. We want to talk to you about the second thing that we think is critical for having a relationship that's the crucible, literally the crucible, the cocoon for you transforming yourself and continually growing. And for us, that second thing, after you've exposed the current automatic narratives, is to develop a context for relating, which I define as a deliberate narrative that's more important than your personal preferences. It's more important than your commitment even to each other. And it's more important than the relationship itself. This is a context that we're going to work with you on creating for your life and your relationships. And this goes for both the single people in the room and the people that are in partnership, because it's something that can be present and in the water in every interaction, right? It can be present at the Starbucks line. It can be present with your partner. It can be present with your friends. It can be present with a waiter. So let's talk a little bit about a context for relating and what we mean by that. Most people have it that you commit to each other and you kind of circle around each other. And that's a binary system, right? You've got two poles, you and them, and you're kind of circling around each other and you commit. And a lot of the ways that looks is, you get into a conflict, and it's like, I want it my way. No, I want it my way. And you get into this conflict about whose way is the better way. And in a binary system, there's some percentage that you get your way and some percentage that they get their way, and it's a series of kind of compromises and trade-offs. And the baggage that creates ongoingly is this kind of buildup of resentment of not being fully expressed in the relationship, not quite getting your way, even if it's small, right? And we've heard talk about that, like, oh, don't compromise. But what is this other thing that we can do other than that? And we submit that it's creating a context of your relating that is more important than your preferences, more important than the relationship, and more important than your commitment. And I often call it the third pole. So if you've got a binary system here and here, and you're circling around each other, this context for your relating is this third thing, this third pole, almost like a compass that you have in your life. And with that third thing, it draws you both together and upward into growth. Because everything about the way you relate has that in it. And we'll talk more about how do you figure out what that is. But that third pole gives you access to a relationship that becomes the crucible for your transformation. But it has to be, and this sounds controversial maybe to some of you, it has to be more important. Because when you're fighting over preferences, something has to break you out of that game. And if you have something like being a more extraordinary human or growth or connection, there's so many wonderful paradigms and narratives we've heard here, like Annie and Eben for me represent contribution. Their relationship seems to be about how can we have our alchemy come together such that we can share everything we know about love. And so their context for relating, from what I can see, is about contributing the most to each other and to the world. So then when they get into fight, they figure out, oh, wait a minute, how can we make this contribute to one another? Rather than, I want my way, well, who gets their way? You see the difference of what can happen in a conflict when you have a context.
I just want to say, Jennifer mentioned sort of the fighting over the compromise that happens in a binary system. Many of those fights, by the way, are cold wars, not hot wars. Yeah. Most of them, in fact, at the original agreement are, I'd like it here, I'd like it there. Well, we'll put it in the middle. Okay, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Cool. There's no fight necessarily. So what we're talking about doesn't only occur when there's actual tension that you can observe. If there's no context for relating, no deliberate one, then it's just like you just settle into a lifestyle which is the average of your intentions. You know, I like west, you like north, or it will go northwest. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But northwest isn't north or west. Mm-hmm. And then if you have a deliberate context for relating, like contribution, or for, Amber and Nathan, it's exploring and
transcendence.
Exploring transcendence and spirituality.
Right. So their context, every interaction that they have has a little bit in it, even if it isn't like direct. That idea of transcending. They are relating in order to transcend with each other. I mean, and this is what we consider. You might ask them if we have it right.
And then when they, when we or they, when they have a decision to make, they don't make it on the basis of, I like it this way, how do you like it that way, well, you got your way last time, I'll get my way this time. They ask the question, what would contribute more? Okay, here we are, we're in this conflict, let's say we're Annie and Eben. How do we resolve the conflict? Well, what would contribute more? Well, if we resolve it this way, it has the maximal benefit for mankind, so that's the way we have to go, regardless of whether either of us like it.
Yeah.
And for us, you want to talk about ours?
Well, let me bring this point, and then let's talk a little bit about, just briefly about ours, just to shed light. Here's what happens in a binary system. In a binary system, you have to bring less than all of you to the relationship, because if you want it one way and they want it another, you will be in violation of your agreement if you just go ahead and assert all the time your way over theirs. And so that relationship fundamentally won't allow you to bring all of you. You have to kind of, oh, well, he lets me do this, and, and he gets to do something that I don't like him doing. And so now I'm not doing, or I'm not going to do this because he doesn't like it. And so I'm now not doing something that is part of who I am. And so that's the compromise. But if you have a third pole, a context for relating, it requires all of you to be in service to that, not the portions of you that your partner likes or agrees with. So it literally brings you into full expression because you're in service to something that's more important. Yeah.
Annie had mentioned that you don't actually give up on your independence or individuality or your freedom when you enter a partnership. The partnership unlocks for you a different kind of independence or freedom. And this is exactly how that does that. You need this third context so that it will demand all of you to show up. One of the sort of experts on bringing all of yourself to a relationship, in my view, happens to be here in the room. His name's Bruce Music. Awesome guy. You have to talk to him. But he talks about integrity and bringing all of your integrity with your purpose, driven by something that's more important than the relationship to you, and just trusting that if you have that point in common, that you'll always be coming together as you grow. If we have the single point in common that we are striving towards, then we cannot grow apart. Yeah. And if ever this relationship puts that at risk, it's an easy choice because I'm committed to that.
Yeah, this was a really important thing for me to learn because I had gone from serial relationship to serial relationship before meeting Bryan, not understanding why I couldn't get this longevity thing figured out, right? I just couldn't figure out how to stay with a person because I was fundamentally unsatisfied about not feeling fully expressed in the relationship. There was parts of me that felt unmet. Is that familiar? Have you ever thought that or said that? How many of you have said, there's parts of me that are unmet in my relationship? That's a lot of you, right? imagine having a context that you set deliberately with your partner. And an important part of this context is that it's something you both agree on. It's not like I have my context, you have yours, because then we still fight. It's still a binary system. It's you come to some agreement about what that is, an inspiring version of it where you roughly have a similar definition, and you come to agreement about what that is. And it really pulls you into growth, pulls you into this upward spiral. I mean, our fights probably look very different when we are engaging this. Because when there's something that we don't like, we go, oh, wait a minute. Well, what would be the more extraordinary thing to do right now? And surprisingly, and you guys I want you guys to try this. Don't take our word for it. Surprisingly, we don't ever fight when it's like, oh, well, what would be more extraordinary? It's usually obvious.
It's apparent. So I don't know if she said it explicitly, but
Oh, right.
The context for our relationship is to discover and live an extraordinary life. That's why we're together, is to discover and live an extraordinary life. And we were on the phone even before our first official date, talking about our desire to really live an extraordinary life and sort of a background fear we had that we'd settle into mediocrity in any domain: money, sex, career, creative expression, wardrobe.
I made him over. He's way more extraordinarily
I had
dressed.
help. Wear your wife's clothes. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. So then,
He does, too.
and they look good on me, don't they?
Some of you know us.
So,
Anyway.
so, for example, we were talking one day and we're like, Jennifer never apologizes. I said, you never apologize. I apologize like 25 times a day. You never apologize. You need to apologize more and even this shit out. And she's like, you're right. I should apologize more, because all of that came from her wanting to love me better. And as she was saying, you're right, I should apologize more, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That doesn't sound very extraordinary. Like, if you imagine 10, 20, 30 years of a commitment to apologize more. What does that look like, right? And as much as I wanted that in the moment, it was so obviously not more extraordinary. So I said, hold the horses. Actually, I think we should have a relationship where we commit to apologize less. Because 10, 20, 30 years of a commitment to apologize less, bound by love, that seems extraordinary.
Yeah, and for me, just really briefly on that, because that sounds kind of controversial, I think. Eben spoke to it really beautifully. Him and I, this is another one of the ways that we like mind meld and get each other, is I see apologies as mostly on automatic. And for the most part, I'm going to make a big statement here that they're lies. We're not being honest. And so in the heat of the moment, I would much rather someone say, you know what, I did mean to hurt your feelings. I was angry. I meant to hurt you. I wanted to take vengeance. That to me takes both courage and self-awareness. I'd take that any day over, I didn't mean to. When in the moment, even if you're remorseful later, in the moment you did mean to. Mm-hmm. And so we battled that one over, and even though in his family system, I mean, this goes all the way back to family, apology is just what you did.
13 generations, I tracked it down.
Yeah.
13 generations of apologizers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ends here. I'm training my son, who's 7. And, yes, that was her preference, but it wasn't the point that was her preference.
Right. I was willing to give that up, my preference up,
Right.
in service to him, but it was a discussion about what would be more extraordinary.
So I want to talk for a second to the single people. I would highly recommend that you identify what your context for relating is now, and that you project that as loudly and as early in every interaction you have with the opposite sex. Maybe in every interaction you have with any human. At the time that I met Jennifer, I felt very bound. I felt like I wasn't free, and I couldn't express myself the way I wanted to. And I decided that what was most important to me was finding boundaries and pushing them, mine and yours. And so anytime I'd meet someone, particularly a woman, within the first hour or so, I would either say or demonstrate or both that our relationship is going to be about finding boundaries and pushing them. Now, this had a polarizing effect, as you can imagine. People who were not interested in having their boundaries pushed saw me as dangerous and ran the other way. People who were into that game ran towards me. And pretty soon I was completely surrounded by amazing people, men and women, who all were interested in finding and pushing boundaries in general. And I found like the king, queen, amazing boundary pusher. Really the most genius boundary pusher.
Yes, finally a man that can play with me. That's how I responded.
Who's literally spent, a decade or more expanding her ability to respond to sensation at the lightest touch and at the heaviest intensity through martial arts, her spirituality, her sexuality.
Yeah, I often say if there was a God that I worshipped, it would be the God of range. And what I mean by range is I mean like infinite range. I want like what's possible for me and to be at the widest, like both from the subtle to the not subtle, both hot and cold. I want to expand what I can hold and what I can do and be. So I don't want to just be one thing defined by a list of characteristics. I want to learn how to encompass them all. And therefore, it feels like Godding if I can be all of it, right? Or at least closely approximating it as possible. But so he comes with this context, and I'm, of course, thrilled.
Well, if you identify, and this is...
Made for a hot date.
The trick is that it has to really be more important to you than anything else. You can't fake it. It can't be what you would like to be more important to you. It can't be something that sounds attractive, because you're going to be confronted with death. And it's going to look like your partner is the cause of the confrontation, the cause of the impending death. And as the caterpillar being confronted with liquefaction, something has to be really more important to you. And me expanding my boundaries at that time was. And because I was upfront with that, because I announced it with my actions and my words in literally the first few moments of interacting with me, and there's still a little bit of that in my interactions, as you may have noticed, then this is who shows up and falls in love. I would assert that most of you, if you're single, whether you're aware of it or not, you're basically looking for a cure for horniness and loneliness.
Yeah.
You're basically looking to cure the fact that you're horny and lonely. And if that's the context that you are putting forth in your interactions, then you will attract and hook up with someone who is looking for that cure, the same one. And then that will lend itself to a comfort-based relationship, which isn't bad, but it's not a crucible for transformation. And I would assert that if you're in this room or if you're watching this, that you've already self-selected as someone who wants to have the most extraordinary relationship you can, the most extraordinary life you can.
Yeah, on a hierarchy of reasons to relate, putting a salve on your loneliness and your need for sex as the basis, it would probably be near the bottom, right? And so we're talking about going up that pyramid of self-actualization here and basing your relationships up here. Not that you don't have to have that stuff handled. I mean, you ought to have that handled, but, moving towards that self-actualized place. We ready for this?
We want to get two people up on the microphone. I want a single person and a not single person, one at each microphone. Single people over here, not single over here. Hurry.
And what we're going to do with you is help you, coach you through discovering what your context for relating, because in a minute we're going to have the rest of you do it.
So we want to discover, you're single, right? You're on the single side? Okay, great. What do you suppose might be the context for your relations with women?
Evolution and creativity.
Excellent. Evolution and creativity. So talk about what's evolution mean to you?
Growth of consciousness and shift of adaptation, becoming more functional, intelligent, aware,
Okay.
also more adaptable,
Okay.
responsible.
Okay. And creativity, what do you mean by that?
There's spontaneous upflow in me
Uh-huh.
of new ideas, new creations, music, writing, my professional work, just new ideas being generated that I bring alive in myself.
Uh-huh.
When I've got them to sufficient maturity that they actually function, I bring them to others for service.
To others, great. So you could have a context for relating where you and her are going to discover how to most encourage creativity in each other and allow each other's evolution for the purpose of service.
I would flip it around. I would
Tell me.
say encourage the evolution in each other.
Okay.
Validate it, reinforce it.
Through creativity.
And
right?
appreciate the creations that we each come up with.
Okay?
The way I would word it is support the evolution of each other through the expression of creativity. And creativity is not just art, right? Creativity is how you create your life, how you create your interactions, as Bryan was saying.
Yeah, right.
So appreciate the creativity feels soft to me. And man to man, I think you want to have you want to penetrate the world more with your purpose, because I think it's going to be hotter. The women that will end up responding to that are going to be women you're going to like being around. So what is the most sort of forceful, piercing, penetrative verb you can think of with respect to creativity?
Enactment.
Okay. There's inspire, there's what?
I liked enact.
Enactment. What I'm looking for is everyone within 100 miles is more creative than they've ever dreamed of being because they've been in your presence. What would that be like?
That would be fun. That would be a carnival.
Yeah, exactly. So you're creating a carnival of creativity.
Right.
So can you say, hey, this is how it goes. You're like, hey, nice to meet you. Where you're from? By the way, just so you know, our relationship is going to be about creating a carnival of creativity. Can you say that? And a role play with me? Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, pretty good. Say, so what's your story?
Well, my story is that not only am I incredibly creative, I'm a fountain of creativity. I also appreciate others who are a fountain of creativity.
Can I stop you?
Yeah.
Don't care about any of that. What I care about is the carnival of creativity that our relationship is going to create. Because what you started to do is kind of sell me on you. And what I'm interested in is you selling me on what we're going to do together. So just try it one more time, which is, I just want you to know that the context for our relationship is going to be that we are creating a carnival of creativity. Try that.
Our being in each other's lives is going to set each other on fire in our own creative ways.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Ah.
How was
I'm
that?
excited to interact in that.
All right. So,
Do you hear the difference between that and I appreciate creativity?
Sure.
yeah.
As an opener for talking to any woman or man.
Yeah.
Oh,
And that can be, you can have that with the waitress, with your mom. It doesn't have to be a sexual possibility. In fact, the more it's with every woman, the more the woman you want will be there. So women, just raise your hand if that was hot. Okay, awesome. That was hot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. The context for relationship.
For your relating.
Tell us what, if anything, came to mind first.
Awakening, truth, freedom.
You got your palm read recently.
I did.
Yes. And what was that your purpose is?
To help people become free of shame around money and sex.
Okay. So how could you translate that into a context for relating with men? and with your
That
man.
in this relationship together, we are going to become free of our own shame around money and sex and help others to become free as well.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to lead the world in being free from shame around sex and money.
Yes.
I think it's beautiful.
Can I go into that a little bit?
Yes, please.
Because I want to talk to you and the women here around the idea of liberation,
Yeah.
freedom. So, speaking to the women, imagine a liberated man for a moment. And I would suggest that that man is sexually free, confident. He understands what he wants. He's right with his desires and is fully expressed. And to the women in the room, I want you to understand that you're creating your man into that.
Yeah.
Right? And one of the ways that you can do that and liberate your man, and this is a mantle I hope that all of us women take on for the planet, is to take on the liberation of your man, especially with respect to sexuality and sexual desire. For most men, there is so much shame bound up in them around this topic that if you could take on the mantle of liberating all of their kind of arrested attention on that sex and on the lack of it and on them not being worthy, that you would produce a population of the most extraordinary men on the planet. Right? Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing some amens from the men, yes? I've taken on this mantle very seriously with Bryan, and for you women, it means something scary. It means yesing their desires. Mm-hmm. All of them. The ones you like, the ones you don't. Yesing their desires and believing in this one fundamental belief, which is that their desires mean something good about them, not something bad. We make men wrong like 15 times before breakfast, many of us, right? Oh, you didn't do that right. Well, why didn't you scratch my... You know, I mean, we just whine, we're whine and I mean, men are famous for calling us naggers, right? How about sinking into the idea that you are there to liberate that man sexually, emotionally, and mentally, and yesing his desires such that when he brings them to you, rather than recoiling and going like this, he opens proudly. A story I have with Bryan around this, I love that you're taking this on, Alexis, because you are such a gorgeous woman. I happen to know you outside of this context. You are a woman that can do this.
Thank you.
So, in an interchange that I had with Bryan, we'd known each other for a little while, and he brought some really dark stuff. We were in the bedroom, and some really dark stuff was coming out. Stuff that he was terrified of having me see in him, right? I think we all have some of those places in us, yes? Do we have some places that we're so shameful that we can't fathom the idea of anyone seeing? So he started bringing up some of this stuff. And my response in my loving him, as deeply as I could love any man, was to look him in the eye as he's bringing me like the demon slut that he is and say, more. I want it. Mm-hmm. Let me love it. Let me fuck it. Let me shower it. Let me pray to it. Like all 7 ways that we just learned from Mark, did I want to give to that part to liberate him. Pray, personality sex, vital sex, pleasure sex, pray sex, true self sex, into that part, because those parts are the only parts that are not given love often. They're impoverished, these parts. So in your taking this on, yes, your man's desires, know that they mean something good about him, not something bad. believe it even when they don't, because they won't.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm with you in this one, sister,
Yeah.
right here.
And
Yeah,
if
go
I
ahead.
just add one more thing, what I also hear you saying is say yes to their desires in the relationship and outside the relationship.
Yeah,
Because oftentimes those desires are going to bubble over.
yeah, yeah. Let me make a quick distinction, because this is such a rich topic. It was an important step for Bryan and I when I was on this path of taking on his liberation as what I was here to do. Because in general, we women, in general, we're more sexually advanced. So it's up to us to lead this, not them. I got that from Amber, so thank you for that. And in our dynamic, so that some of you that are a little bit scared of this idea, what we did is we separated the idea of yesing the desires and him going out and acting them.
Yes.
Right? There's a difference between like yesing it, making it mean something good about him, and saying, okay, now go do it.
Yes.
Right? And for each relationship, you're going to have to set that where you can. And I encourage you to face any fears you have around that and try to give him the widest berth possible. Because as you're setting him free, what will come out of him, what he'll be inspired to do, will be in worship and in service of you.
Yes.
Right? Once those impoverished parts are loved, he's not going to want to go behind your back and lie and cheat and steal and do all these things, because those things are in the light. Right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
So just like I think men in society are about, let's say, 5 to 500 times more sexually repressed than women. We have this very awkward relationship with our sex. It's almost like strangers that live together. There's a reciprocal in the symmetry of relationship. There's a reciprocal repression that most women have around either their creative or professional expression. They're leaving their legacy on the planet. The culture has been unkind to women who want to leave a legacy, and I think that every human wants that. So just like she takes up the mantle for my sexual liberation, I take responsibility for creating like the garden in which her radiance can grow. And I judge myself on a day-to-day basis based on my felt sense of her radiance. And in fact, I judge every man by the radiance of his woman. And if I meet you and you've got your arm around your wife and she looks like the Walking Dead, it's going to be very difficult for you to gain my respect. But if I meet you and you say, that woman who was dancing on stage and there was so much light coming from her that everyone cried? Yeah, that's my wife. I bow to you. Because I think it's our job as men to create the container with the same purpose, the same wisdom and ferocity that we create, our own financial lives, let's say. Create the container for expression. One of the big lessons I learned was there's a huge difference between, yes, honey, I think you should do that. You should go ahead. Yeah, absolutely. There's a big difference between that and actually supporting someone's radiance, freedom, expression in an area where they feel small. You actually have to go to great lengths to overcompensate for generations upon generations upon generations upon generations of repression. We as men are literally fighting against the fear of 1,000 generations of men before us, the fear of feminine power. And to fight against that, what you have to do is you have to literally put yourself in the doorway so the door can't close so that she can walk through. And just a small example in our relationship when I did that, so we'll talk in specific terms instead of just general. it's been a childhood dream of Jennifer's to teach, and you can see why. She's amazing. And she had already been my greatest teacher, hands down. Mark Gaffney said that if we had no scriptures, we could learn everything from sex. Well, I was learning everything from Jennifer. It was amazing. And I wanted that gift to be given to the world. And she had the childhood dream of teaching, and I had this job where I was teaching. I was teaching entrepreneurs and coaches on stages. And she came and agreed to be president of the company, and she was like acting as a support role and getting wiltier and wiltier and wiltier in her support role. And so at the conclusion of one of our programs, I said, Jennifer, I'm never taking the stage again. I'm never writing a book, and I'm never coaching again unless I do that with you at my side. So the company is over.
Yeah, thank you. Scared me to death.
The company is over unless you step up. And it's okay. We can go do something else. I'll go get a job as a salesman, whatever. But this thing that you're supporting that's happening in the world, our gift that we're giving together, I won't stand for the artifice of it being me in front anymore. Because half the words or more that I speak are words that you whispered to me in the bedroom. So that's what it means to stand for Radiance. You know, you put yourself in the way of it. You don't just politely encourage. That would be, just to give you men an idea, it would be like your deepest sexual shame, the desire that you've never admitted to anyone. That fantasy that's so dark that you can't even admit it yourself, to have her say, it's okay, honey, you can share that with your mother, go ahead. It's not going to happen. So you take the mantle of her radiance, of her liberation. Feminine liberation and freedom is expressed through radiance and brilliance. Masculine liberation is expressed as confidence.
What it feels like to be with a man that is in service to my radiance, it's like my being gets to kind of unfurl and show up and spread out. And it's the most ecstatic, glorious way of loving that I've ever experienced. So, men, hear this. Realize you don't need to be threatened by a radiant woman, because she will be so devoted, so ever devoted to you for giving her that gift. Because we require you, we depend on you to help create the safe container for us to unfurl. We need you for it. So I think we're gonna let you do the exercise of figuring out the context for your relating over lunch. I encourage you to do a lunchtime exercise. And if you're in a couple, since you probably will go to lunch together, do it as a couple or do it in groups. If you're single, I really encourage you. There are extraordinary people in this room. Go to lunch with several people that you may not know, that you're not necessarily in a couple with, and have them work through this handout about the context of relating. Mm-hmm. And see if you can come back here having identified it. And there's a way that we want to end very quickly. It was brought up that we have this ritual. Bryan and I have a very, very special relationship to words and poetry. We're in the business of speaking them, and so we loved to hear some of the greatest poets tell us their words. And we were given this poem by a dear friend of ours, and I looked at Bryan and I said, as our sacred ritual, instead of just looking at me and saying, good morning, dear.
What time's our first appointment?
Yeah, what do we have to do today? Let me check my email, right? Which is how so many of us wake up, right? I mean, Amber and Nathan talked about this, like bringing sacredness in. And we bring sacredness into every morning.
You're going to shower first or me?
Right, exactly. With this poem, which you'll see sets the stage for a very passionate, conscious, spirit and sex-filled relationship that we want all of you to have. So I'd love for you to recite that morning ritual, that
Sure.
poem to us before, and then we'll end.
All the great masters say that the great work is in spiritualizing the body and corporealizing the spirit. The philosopher's stone, the final alchemy, is the spirit arrived at the density and reality of a body. I raise myself to God to compel him to descend into my being and birth him. And for that, I need a body. I must develop a strong body, powerful, sensual, sexual, volcanic, and fertile. Oh yes, I love life.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
That's our time.
I love you, sweetheart.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
By the way, basically all the folks that you're going to see speak here in one way or another are teachers, coaches, have great programs. Mark, you still in the room? Where you at? Oh, you're back there being shy again, huh? If someone wanted to check your stuff out, where are the best places for them to go?